My name is Freya Collins. I'm 37 years old, and 3 months ago, my husband destroyed our marriage in the middle of an Italian restaurant over a patio set. At least, that's what he tells people. According to Ethan Mercer, this entire divorce happened because I overreacted to one rude comment during dinner. But marriages don't collapse in a single night. They collapse slowly, quietly, one humiliation at a time. Ethan and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5, living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Before we got married, I bought a 3-bedroom townhouse on the south side of the city. The mortgage and deed stayed entirely in my name. That detail matters later. For most of our marriage, things looked stable from the outside. I worked as a logistics manager for a medical supply company and earned just under $96,000 a year. Ethan worked as an event coordinator and made around $46,000, depending on commissions and seasonal contracts. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Mortgage was $2,180. Utilities averaged around $400 a month. Ethan's SUV payment was $530. We used one joint account for household bills and kept separate personal accounts. Simple, organized, functional. At first, Ethan loved that about me. He used to joke that I could organize a hurricane into labeled storage bins. Back then, he said it with affection. Later, he said it like an insult. The change started after 2 of his friends renovated their homes and turned their entire lives into social media performances. Marble countertops, luxury vacations, champagne captions about soft life energy. Suddenly, every dinner conversation became a comparison. Why don't we host more? Why does Serena's boyfriend buy her jewelry randomly? Why do you always think practical instead of romantic? At first, I laughed it off. Everybody gets insecure sometimes. But slowly, Ethan stopped sounding disappointed and started sounding resentful. 3 weeks before everything exploded, he sent me a link to an outdoor patio set that cost almost $9,000. I honestly thought he'd clicked the wrong one. He hadn't. I remember sitting at the kitchen island staring at the price while he stood there with his arms crossed, waiting for my reaction. I told him we technically could afford it, but it would be irresponsible. Our HVAC system was getting older, and I was helping my father recover after knee surgery. We had priorities. Ethan looked at me for a long moment before saying quietly, "You always have an excuse when it comes to making me feel special." That sentence sat with me longer than I admitted at the time. Because the truth was, I had spent years trying to make him feel loved. But nothing ever counted if it wasn't expensive enough, dramatic enough, public enough. The final night happened on a Friday. We met our neighbors Trevor and Mallory at an Italian restaurant Ethan loved because it looked expensive enough to photograph. Halfway through appetizers, Ethan brought up the patio set. Not casually, deliberately. Mallory laughed awkwardly and said the set looked beautiful online. Then Ethan smiled at Trevor and said, "Some partners actually understand presentation." I already knew where the conversation was going. I said quietly, "Ethan, we already talked about this." He leaned back in his chair, swirling wine in his glass like he was performing for an audience. "Trevor surprised Mallory with a Napa trip last month," he said. "Meanwhile, I have to prepare a financial presentation just to buy outdoor furniture." Trevor immediately looked uncomfortable. Mallory stared down at her plate. I felt heat crawling slowly up my neck, but I kept my voice calm. "We agreed to focus on necessary expenses right now." Ethan smiled. That smile still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. It wasn't anger. It was superiority. Then he said the sentence that ended our marriage. "Since you love acting like the woman of the house whenever it's time to say no, stay in the guest room until you learn respect." Silence. Not normal silence. The kind that swallows an entire table whole. I remember hearing silverware clink somewhere behind us. A waiter froze near the kitchen entrance, and Ethan just sat there smiling at me like he'd won something. Like humiliating me publicly was funny. Like I was supposed to laugh too. For a second, I saw our entire marriage differently. All the little comments. All the punishments disguised as jokes. All the moments where he embarrassed me slightly, then accused me of being sensitive afterward. It hit me all at once. This wasn't frustration. This was contempt. I set my napkin beside my plate carefully. Then I looked directly at him and said, "Keep the room." No yelling. No dramatic speech. Just that. I dropped cash on the table, told Trevor goodnight, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Ethan laugh nervously and say, "Oh my God, Freya, seriously?" I kept walking. 6 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Are you seriously being dramatic over one sentence?" I stared at the message in the parking lot for almost 30 seconds. Then I typed back, "No, I'm taking you seriously for the first time in months." His response came immediately. "Enjoy the guest room." I actually laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny, because he still thought this was a game. I drove home slowly and sat in the townhouse driveway without turning the engine off. The porch light glowed softly against the brick walls. My father's old toolbox still sat in the garage corner from when he helped install shelves the previous summer. Everything looked normal. And somehow, that made it worse. Because my marriage had apparently been dying quietly while I was still trying to save it. I called a divorce attorney whose name a coworker once gave me during a conversation about messy separations. Her office returned my voicemail the next morning. I met with Elise Warren that Saturday. Best $425 I've ever spent. I brought the deed, mortgage documents, screenshots of our accounts, and the text exchange from dinner. Elise read the messages twice. Then she looked up at me and asked, "Has your husband used punishment tactics before?" I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "Silent treatment, public humiliation, financial guilt, controlling sleeping arrangements, emotional consequences for disagreement." The fact she listed them so easily made my chest tighten. I answered quietly, "Yes." Elise leaned back slowly. "Freya, this divorce didn't start at dinner." I think that was the exact moment I emotionally accepted the marriage was over. Not because of the guest room comment. Because someone outside my relationship recognized the pattern immediately. Elise told me not to do anything reckless. Don't throw out his belongings. Don't drain joint accounts. Don't change locks yet. But reroute my paycheck. Separate finances legally. Photograph the property room by room. Document everything. File first. So I did. By Saturday evening, my direct deposit was moved into a new account. I transferred exactly half the joint household balance into a separate bills account and left the rest untouched. I photographed every room in the townhouse. Every drawer. Every shelf. The garage. The office. Even the patio Ethan wanted to redesign so desperately. Meanwhile, Ethan spent the afternoon at brunch with Serena and friends by the lake. He came home around 1:40, carrying shopping bags and sunglasses perched on his head. The second he walked inside, he smirked. "I assume you're ready to apologize now?" I was sitting at the kitchen island beside a stack of copied financial documents and a yellow legal pad. I looked up calmly and said, "I spoke to a lawyer today." He laughed instantly. Actually laughed. Then I slid the consultation receipt across the counter. His entire expression changed. "You're filing for divorce because I told you to sleep in the guest room?" I met his stare evenly. "No, I'm filing because you've been treating this marriage like a game where I'm supposed to lose politely." His face darkened immediately. "That is insane." "It's accurate." He started pacing around the kitchen, running both hands through his hair. "You're seriously trying to destroy our marriage over one argument?" "It wasn't one argument." "You're unbelievable." "No," I said quietly. "I've just finally stopped excusing you." That sentence hit him harder than yelling would have. I could see it. For the first time since the restaurant, Ethan looked genuinely nervous. Not sad. Not guilty. Afraid. Because he was finally realizing I might actually leave. That night, Ethan slept in the guest room. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. I slept inside my office, with the door locked and my phone recording on the nightstand beside me. Just in case. Monday morning, Elise filed the paperwork. Tuesday afternoon, Ethan got served at work. That was when the real chaos started. He called me 17 times in 40 minutes. The first voicemail was furious. The second was crying. The third sounded strangely calm, which somehow unsettled me more than the anger. "Freya, call me back. We are not humiliating me like this over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That became his new favorite word. Not disrespect. Not control. Not public humiliation. A misunderstanding. By Tuesday night, his younger sister Chloe texted me from a number I barely recognized. She said Ethan was devastated. She said divorce was extreme. She said married people say things they don't mean. I replied once, "Married people do say things. That's exactly the problem." Then I blocked her. That night, Ethan came home early and started ripping through drawers like he expected to find proof I'd robbed him. Kitchen drawers opened. Closet doors slid back. Storage bins scraped across the floor. I stood near the dining table and said, "Every household statement is in that folder." He ignored me at first. Then he opened the folder and got even angrier. Because I hadn't drained anything. Half the money was still there. Mortgage money was still there. Utilities were still funded. Nothing was missing. Nothing hidden. Nothing messy. He wanted chaos. Chaos would have helped his story. Instead, I had documentation. The next morning, he texted me from upstairs asking why his debit card declined at a coffee shop. I told him the joint account was now for shared bills only, exactly as my attorney instructed. 30 seconds later, he stormed downstairs barefoot, holding his phone like it was evidence. "You're financially abusing me." I blinked at him. "You have your own income and your own personal account." "You cut me off." I separated household funds. "You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." His mouth tightened. He hated that word. Protecting. Because protection meant I finally understood there was something to protect myself from. By Thursday, Chloe got involved again through Facebook. She sent a long message saying Ethan had sacrificed his best years for our marriage and that real wives didn't blindside their husbands with legal paperwork. I almost ignored it. Then she added, "Everybody knows you're the difficult one anyway." So I sent her 2 screenshots. Ethan's text about the guest room. My reply? Keep the room. Chloe didn't answer for hours. When she finally replied, all she wrote was, "Wow." That one word told me Ethan had left out more than a few details. The bigger issue happened that weekend. I went to the grocery store Saturday morning because pretending life was normal had become its own survival tactic. I bought coffee, paper towels, dish soap, and a rotisserie chicken I never ended up eating. When I came home, I knew something was wrong before I even opened the door. The entry rug was crooked. One of the hallway lights was on. Inside, closet doors hung open. Dresser drawers were dumped halfway out. Our wedding photo had been turned face down on the console table. My office storage cabinet was stacked in the hallway. Nothing appeared stolen. That almost made it more chilling. It wasn't theft. It was a message. I checked the doorbell camera. 3 trips in and out. Ethan, Serena, and another friend carrying tote bags, walking through my home like they had a right to disturb it. I sent the footage to Elise. She fired off a notice to Ethan's attorney that all property removal had to be documented, scheduled, and handled through counsel. Non-essential access was no longer acceptable. Then she told me to change the garage code and install an interior camera in my office. Done. Sunday night, Ethan knocked on my office door. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. Then I opened it halfway. He stood there in sweatpants and a soft gray sweater, looking smaller than usual. His hair was messy. His eyes were red. "Can we please talk like adults?" he asked. I didn't invite him in. He looked past me at the desk, at the folders, at the little camera facing the doorway. His jaw flexed. "I've been stressed," he said. "Social media got in my head. Everyone else is building beautiful lives, and I felt like we were just existing." I said nothing. He continued quickly. "I didn't mean the guest room comment the way it sounded." "How did you mean it?" He looked irritated by the question. I was embarrassed. "You embarrassed me." "I know, but you should know me better than this." That sentence hit something raw in me. Because I did know him. I knew him well enough to recognize the apology wasn't about what he'd done. It was about consequences. I said, "I do know you better than this. That's why I filed. His face changed. For a moment, the softness vanished. Then he said the most honest thing he had said all month. I didn't think you'd ever really leave. There it was. Not the patio set. Not one rude sentence. Not one bad dinner. Certainty. He thought I would stay no matter what he did. I felt a quiet sadness open in my chest. Not sharp. Deep. Like something old collapsing underground. I said, "That was your mistake." He stared at me, then slapped the doorframe with his palm on the way out. The next morning, Linda called me, Ethan's mother. I expected her to tear into me. Instead, she sounded tired. "Freya," she said carefully, "Ethan told me you filed because of a dinner disagreement." I closed my eyes. That isn't what happened. Linda was quiet for several seconds. Then she said, "I figured." So I told her the basics. The public humiliation. The repeated disrespect. The punishment games. The lawyer. The screenshots. I even offered to forward the texts. Linda sighed. "You don't need to. He sent me a version already, and it looked edited." That made my stomach turn. Then she said something I never expected. "A husband does not put his wife in the guest room like she's a misbehaving child." That shocked me more than the filing. I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter. Because somehow, hearing Ethan's own mother say it made the truth feel even heavier. Before hanging up, Linda lowered her voice. "Protect yourself. Ethan gets reckless when he's embarrassed." She was right. 2.5 weeks after Ethan got served, he switched from emotional chaos to strategic chaos. First, he called my office pretending there had been a family emergency. My receptionist transferred the call because she heard husband and hospital. Ethan was not at a hospital. He was outside a nail salon. "I just needed you to answer," he said. I hung up. Then he texted from a new number, claiming he had a flat tire on I-77 and no one else could help. I replied with roadside assistance and Chloe's number. 20 minutes later, Serena posted a story of the two of them at a rooftop bar. So apparently, the emergency recovered quickly. That same week, Ethan sent a 7-page settlement demand through his attorney. He wanted $22,000 in cash, $1,100 a month in temporary support for a year, half the increase in townhouse equity since our wedding, my annual bonus, and the living room sectional, because it was apparently part of his emotional recovery environment. When Elise read that line, she took off her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. Then she smiled. Not warmly. Dangerously. "Good," she said. "Now we answer with facts." And facts were one thing Ethan had never respected until they were aimed directly at him. Elise answered Ethan's settlement demand with something so thorough it looked less like divorce paperwork and more like a federal investigation. Premarital deed records, mortgage history, tax returns, joint account contributions, purchase receipts, retirement summaries, income statements, a spreadsheet detailing exactly who paid for what during every year of the marriage. Even the sectional Ethan wanted for his emotional recovery environment came with documentation proving I bought it 8 months before our wedding. The tone of his attorney's emails changed almost immediately after receiving the response. The demands got quieter, less confident, more careful. But before Ethan backed down completely, he crossed a line that finally made me angry instead of just disappointed. Up until then, most of the damage had stayed inside our personal lives. Then he dragged my career into it. One Thursday morning, my director called me into his office. He shut the door gently and asked, "Freya, are things at home going to affect client relations?" My stomach dropped. One of our biggest medical distribution clients had received a phone call from Ethan, claiming I was mentally unstable during the divorce and might miss deadlines. For a few terrifying seconds, I couldn't even process what I was hearing. Not because I feared it was true. Because I realized Ethan genuinely believed damaging my career was acceptable if it pressured me into giving him attention. I took a slow breath and told my director the truth. Active divorce. Documented harassment. Attorney involvement. Then I showed him the call logs, screenshots, and the cease and desist Elise was already preparing. He read everything carefully before leaning back in his chair. "Handle it fast," he said quietly. "But I believe you." I nearly cried from relief after leaving his office. Not dramatic crying. The silent kind that burns behind your eyes while you sit alone in your car gripping the steering wheel. Because the person you marry knows exactly where to hurt you. That afternoon, Elise sent Ethan's attorney a formal cease and desist notice. No contact with my workplace. No false statements. No third-party harassment. No unscheduled appearances. Contact only through attorneys except for documented property retrieval. Ethan violated it within 48 hours. Not directly. Through Chloe. She messaged me on Facebook accusing me of lawyering up against family and trying to ruin Ethan's life. I screenshotted it and forwarded everything to Elise without replying. At that point, responding emotionally would only feed the cycle. Documentation had become my armor. Then came the police visit. Wednesday evening, 6:13 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was chopping bell peppers for dinner when the doorbell rang. 2 officers stood outside. Professional. Calm. One asked if there had been a dispute involving missing property. I stepped aside immediately and invited them in. Apparently, Ethan had reported that I hid his grandmother's jewelry box and a silver laptop he used for work. I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. I walked them directly to the guest room closet, where 3 labeled plastic bins held Ethan's remaining belongings. The jewelry box sat inside one. The laptop sat inside another. Then I showed them the inventory sheets, the property photographs, the security footage from Ethan's Saturday raid with Serena. One of the officers actually sighed softly while reviewing everything. He thanked me for being organized. Then he turned toward Ethan, who stood near the staircase with his arms folded tightly across his chest. "Sir," the officer said carefully, "this appears to be a civil matter. Exaggerated reports are not helping your situation." Ethan's eyes filled instantly with tears. The switch happened so fast, it almost would have impressed me if I hadn't lived with it for years. Suddenly, his voice cracked. He said he felt unsafe. Overwhelmed. Controlled. He gestured vaguely around the townhouse and said, "She controls everything in this house." The officer looked around slowly. Labeled folders. Color-coded moving boxes. Printed inventories.
Sticky notes.
Storage lists. Then he said, "Sir, there appears to be a system." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because Ethan had spent years mocking my organization until it became the very thing protecting me from his accusations. After the officers left, Ethan stood in the kitchen staring at me with pure hatred. "You're making me look crazy." I set the inventory folder down carefully. "I'm not making you do anything." That sentence shattered whatever calm he had left. He grabbed his keys and slammed the front door so hard the hallway picture frames rattled. The following Monday was mediation. 5 straight hours of listening to Ethan try to turn emotion into currency. He arrived wearing a cream blazer and soft, neutral colors, like he was auditioning for the role of most reasonable husband in North Carolina. I wore a navy suit and carried a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. The mediator greeted us politely and started reviewing preliminary requests. Ethan wanted exclusive use of the townhouse during proceedings. Denied. He wanted me to continue paying his phone bill and SUV insurance. Denied. Then came my favorite request. He wanted reimbursement for what his attorney described as social contributions to Freya's professional image. The mediator blinked. Elise asked calmly, "Could counsel clarify?" Ethan's attorney shuffled papers awkwardly. Hosting dinners, maintaining a presentable home, supporting networking appearances. Elise stared at him for 3 full seconds before saying, "We will not be assigning cash value to vibes." I had to look down at the table to hide my smile. Even the mediator coughed to cover a laugh. Ethan looked furious. Not embarrassed. Furious. Because every failed demand chipped away at the fantasy where he was still controlling the narrative. By the 4th hour, his confidence started collapsing. He interrupted people more. His voice sharpened. He contradicted his own earlier statements twice. Meanwhile, I barely raised my voice once. Not because I was stronger, because I was exhausted. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that comes from finally seeing someone clearly after years of making excuses for them. By the end of mediation, Ethan agreed to move into a one-bedroom sublet Serena's cousin had available downtown. I would remain in the townhouse. We would split the remaining household funds after utilities cleared. Each person would keep their own retirement accounts. Each person would pay their own attorney fees. He could retrieve the rest of his belongings during one scheduled pickup with a neutral third party present. He signed the papers like he was autographing a ransom note. 2 nights later, Ethan returned for the final pickup. But this time, he didn't bring Serena. He brought Linda. That mattered. Linda barely spoke while Ethan packed boxes from the bedroom and bathroom. She just watched quietly, with the expression of someone slowly realizing how much damage happened right in front of her without her noticing. At one point, Ethan started again. "It was a joke, Mom. The guest room thing was obviously a joke, taken out of context." Linda finally turned toward him. "No," she said firmly. "It wasn't." The room went silent. She continued calmly. "You do not humiliate your wife publicly if you respect her." Ethan stared at her like she had betrayed him. Then he looked away. For the first time since this entire disaster began, he had absolutely nothing to say. As they prepared to leave, Linda handed me the spare key Ethan had kept in his pocket. Then quietly, almost sadly, she said, "I'm sorry I didn't see this sooner." After they left, I stood alone in the living room for a long time, listening to the silence. Not sad silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that feels unfamiliar after years of tension humming quietly beneath every conversation. But Ethan wasn't done yet. A few days after mediation, he staged one last public performance. He showed up in the lobby of my office building, carrying a bakery box and a folded handwritten note. Security called upstairs immediately because I had already warned them there was an active divorce and attorney-only contact restrictions. I rode the elevator down with the building manager beside me. Ethan smiled the second he saw me. That smile used to weaken me. Now it just made me tired. "I brought your favorite cannoli," he said softly, holding out the box. "Can we not do this in front of strangers?" I didn't touch it. "Ethan, you were told not to come here." His smile flickered. "I'm trying to save my marriage." "You're violating a legal agreement." That was when his expression changed completely. The softness vanished. He stepped closer and whispered sharply, "You really want people thinking I'm some psycho ex-husband?" I held his stare. "I want you to leave." For 1 second, pure fury flashed across his face. Then, just as quickly, tears appeared. He raised his voice loud enough for the lobby to hear. I was trying to fix things. Security still escorted him out. Afterward, I opened the bakery box. 6 cannoli. And a handwritten note underneath them. It said, "You are going to regret choosing paperwork over love." I photographed the note, forwarded it to Elise, and gave the pastries to the shipping department downstairs. That same week, Serena left me a blocked number voicemail saying Ethan was spiraling and that if I had any decency, I would meet him one final time for closure. Closure. Funny word. Most people say closure when what they really mean is access. By then, I understood something clearly. Every apology, every tear, every dramatic public scene, every emergency, every love note, every breakdown. They all had the same purpose underneath them. Get control back. And once I finally saw that clearly, the house became quiet in a way it hadn't been for years. A little over 3 months after that dinner, the divorce became final. We settled 4 days before trial. In the end, Ethan received $8,400 from the Division of Marital Liquid Assets because dragging the case further would have cost both of us more than resolving it. He kept his SUV, his personal belongings, half the kitchen items we purchased during the marriage, and the bedroom furniture we bought during year 2. I kept the townhouse, my retirement accounts, my annual bonus, my truck, my office furniture, and my peace. When everything was finally over, I calculated the financial damage one night while sitting alone at the kitchen island. Attorney fees, mediation costs, security cameras, garage reprogramming, missed work time, document preparation. The total came to just under $15,000. Expensive. Still cheaper than staying. For the first few weeks after the divorce, Ethan's social media turned into a full-time performance piece about surviving emotionally unavailable women. Quotes about healing. Captions about knowing your worth. Photos of expensive cocktails with vague comments about protecting your energy. Then, eventually, the tone shifted. Brunch photos. Gym selfies. Posts about choosing peace. That part almost made me laugh. Peace had been available the whole time. He just thought peace meant winning. Trevor and Mallory quietly shut down most of the stories Ethan tried spreading around town. They had been at the restaurant that night. They heard exactly what he said. Funny how the audience he wanted became the witnesses he regretted. Work ended better than I expected. The client account stayed with me after both legal departments reviewed the harassment documentation. Then, 2 weeks later, my director promoted me to senior logistics lead. My salary increased to just over $114,000 a year. I celebrated by buying a grill that cost less than 1/10 of the patio set Ethan wanted so badly. The irony felt appropriate. I wasn't in a rush to date again. A few friends tried setting me up anyway. Trevor introduced me to a man named Daniel from his office. We went for coffee twice. He was kind, funny in a calm way, the kind of man who listened fully before answering questions. But I realized something halfway through the second date while he was talking about hiking trails in Asheville. For the first time in years, I genuinely enjoyed going home alone. Not lonely. Alone. There's a difference. I liked walking into a quiet kitchen where nobody was waiting to turn a disagreement into punishment. I liked sitting on my couch without feeling silently evaluated. I liked existing without tension. The guest room became my home gym eventually. That part felt strangely healing. The same room Ethan tried using as leverage became a place where I rebuilt myself physically and emotionally. A few weeks later, I stood in that room, staring at the treadmill, and suddenly remembered the exact tone of his voice at the restaurant. Stay in the guest room until you learn respect. At the time, I thought the sentence humiliated me. Now I realize it revealed him. That's different. The last direct thing I heard involving Ethan came through Linda, about a month after the divorce finalized. A tax document had accidentally been mailed to the townhouse. I taped it inside the storm door for pickup. No drama. No conversation. Just logistics. Linda texted afterward, thanking me. Then, a few minutes later, she sent another message. I wish he understood what he threw away. I stared at that text for a long time before replying. So do I. And I meant it. Because even when leaving is the right decision, grief still exists. People think divorce only hurts when love disappears. That's not true. Sometimes divorce hurts because love existed and slowly got buried underneath entitlement, control, resentment, and ego. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing the person you were fighting for stopped fighting for you a long time ago. They just kept fighting to keep access to you. That realization changes something permanently. Looking back now, I understand our marriage was never destroyed by one sentence at dinner. It was destroyed by what that sentence exposed. Ethan genuinely believed he could humiliate me publicly, punish me privately, manipulate me emotionally, and still wake up married to the same patient woman the next morning. He thought love meant unlimited tolerance. He thought commitment meant immunity from consequences. And maybe the saddest part is that for years, I helped reinforce that belief by staying quiet every time he crossed a line. Marriage is not one person assigning consequences while the other absorbs them. It is not using silence, embarrassment, money, affection, or sleeping arrangements as tools for obedience. It is not public disrespect followed by private revision. And the moment your relationship starts feeling less like partnership and more like behavioral management, something is already broken. I didn't leave because my feelings got hurt. I left because respect became conditional. And staying would have meant agreeing to live that way forever. That night in the restaurant, When Ethan told me to stay in the guest room until I learned respect, I actually did learn something. Just not what he expected. I learned that love without dignity eventually turns into captivity. And once you finally see that clearly, leaving stops feeling dramatic. It starts feeling necessary.